The train whistle shrieked through the crisp autumn air as Faith Adams clutched her 6-month-old daughter Emma to her chest, her heart pounding with the same frantic rhythm as the steam engine pulling into Riverside Station, Wyoming Territory, 1878. This wasn't how her journey west was supposed to end alone, abandoned with nothing but 2 carpetbags, a baby, and a letter from a husband-to-be who'd apparently changed his mind. Last stop. Riverside. All passengers disembark, the conductor called, his voice carrying over the hissing steam. Faith stepped down onto the wooden platform, her legs unsteady after 3 days of travel. The October wind bit through her thin coat, and Emma whimpered against her shoulder. "Hush, little one," Faith whispered, bouncing the infant gently. "We'll figure something out." Though what that something might be, she had no idea. She'd left Pennsylvania with such hope, responding to Harold Jennings' advertisement seeking a bride. His letters had promised a comfortable home, security, and a new start for her and her daughter. Faith had been desperate enough to believe him. The scandal of being an unwed mother had made her life in her hometown unbearable. Harold had claimed not to mind taking on another man's child, saying only that he wanted a family. But there was no Harold waiting on the platform. Only a folded piece of paper handed to her by the station master with an apologetic look. "Madam, this came for you yesterday," he said, tipping his hat. Faith shifted Emma to her other arm and opened the note with trembling fingers. "Miss Adams, circumstances have changed. Cannot meet our arrangement. Best of luck to you and the child. H. Jennings." The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. Faith sank onto a nearby bench, trying to keep her composure as the other passengers hurried past, greeted by family members or business associates. No one spared her more than a curious glance. "Madam, station's closing soon," the station master said, his voice gentle but firm. "You have somewhere to go." Faith wiped her eyes quickly. "Yes, of course," she lied, pride preventing her from admitting the truth. "I'm just waiting for my ride." The man nodded, though his eyes showed he didn't quite believe her. As he walked away, Faith fought back panic. She had exactly $12.43 to her name, barely enough for a few nights at a boarding house, if Riverside even had one. As the platform emptied and the afternoon shadows lengthened, Faith finally accepted that she needed to find shelter for the night. She gathered her bags and stood, Emma fussing from hunger and discomfort. "I know, sweet girl," Faith murmured. "We'll get you fed soon." The walk into town proved more difficult than expected. Her arms ached from carrying Emma and dragging the bags through the rutted dirt road. Riverside was larger than she'd imagined from Harold's descriptions, a proper frontier town with a main street lined with businesses, a church steeple visible at one end, and the steady traffic of horses, wagons, and townspeople going about their business. Faith paused outside the Riverside Hotel, her heart sinking at the elegant sign proclaiming rooms $1 per night. Too expensive for more than a couple of nights. She continued walking, searching for something more affordable. As she passed the general store, Emma began to wail in earnest, her tiny face scrunched and red. Faith tried to soothe her, but the baby was beyond comfort, hungry, tired, and sensing her mother's distress. "Looks like someone's having a rough day." Faith turned to find a man watching her from the hitching post where he'd been securing his horse. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in worn denims, a blue work shirt, and a dust-covered leather vest. A cowboy's hat shaded eyes that studied her with surprising kindness. "We're fine," Faith said quickly, bouncing Emma, who only cried louder. "Forgive me for saying so, madam, but you don't look fine." He approached carefully, as if worried about frightening her. "New in town," Faith hesitated. Her mother had always warned her about speaking to strange men, but desperation loosened her tongue. "Just arrived. I'm looking for affordable lodging." The man nodded thoughtfully. "Widow?" Faith faltered. "No, I was to be married, but my intended has had a change of heart." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Mail order bride." Faith flushed with shame but nodded. There was no point in lying. The man removed his hat, revealing thick chestnut hair. "Cole Quincy," he said. "I own a ranch about 5 miles outside of town." "Faith Adams," she replied. "And this is Emma." As if on cue, Emma's cries grew even more desperate. Faith shifted her weight, feeling utterly helpless. "When did you last eat, Miss Adams?" Cole asked, his brow furrowed. "Yesterday evening," she admitted. "I had some bread on the train, but—" Cole's jaw tightened. "And the little one?" "I've been nursing, but I'm afraid I haven't had enough to eat myself, so—" He nodded, his expression darkening. "Well then, first things first, let's get you both fed." "I couldn't possibly," Faith began. "Miss Adams," Cole interrupted gently, "I'm not offering charity. But no decent man leaves a woman and child hungry when he can do something about it." Before Faith could protest further, he took her bags and gestured toward the nearby cafe. "The food's simple but good, and afterwards, we can figure out your situation." Too exhausted to argue, Faith followed him into the warm cafe where the aroma of fresh bread and stew made her stomach clench painfully. Cole settled them at a corner table and ordered 2 bowls of stew, bread, and coffee. "Bring some milk too, Sarah," he called to the waitress. "And maybe some of those applesauce cookies your ma makes." The waitress nodded, giving Faith a curious look before disappearing into the kitchen. "People will talk," Faith said quietly, trying to calm Emma. Cole shrugged. "Let them. Folks in Riverside love gossip, but they're good people at heart." The food arrived quickly, and Faith nearly wept at the sight of the steaming bowl. She ate with one hand, holding Emma with the other, until Cole surprised her by reaching for the baby. "May I? Just so you can eat properly." "I've got 8 nieces and nephews, so I'm not completely useless with little ones." Faith hesitated only briefly before allowing him to take Emma. To her astonishment, the baby quieted almost immediately in his large, gentle hands. "She likes you," Faith said, watching as Emma stared up at Cole with fascination. "Babies are good judges of character," he replied with a slight smile. "At least, that's what my sister claims." Faith ate her fill for the first time in days, the hot food and coffee reviving her spirits somewhat. As she finished, she realized she needed to address their situation. "Mr. Quincy, I appreciate your kindness, but I can't impose further. Is there a boarding house in town where Emma and I might stay while I look for work?" Cole bounced Emma gently as he considered. "There's Mrs. Thornton's place, but it's not much better than the hotel for price, and most businesses in town aren't looking to hire." Faith's face fell. "I see. However," Cole continued, "I do have a proposition for you." Faith tensed immediately, her guard rising. She'd heard about men who preyed on desperate women, especially those with no protection or means. Seeing her expression, Cole quickly added, "It's nothing improper, Miss Adams. My housekeeper left 2 months ago to care for her ailing sister in Denver. I've been managing the cooking and cleaning myself, but frankly, I'm better with cattle than cook stoves." "You're offering me a position as your housekeeper," Cole nodded. "Room and board for you and Emma, plus wages $10 a month to start. The cabin's small but clean, separate from the main house. You'd have your privacy." It seemed too good to be true. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Cole looked down at Emma, who had fallen asleep against his chest. "Let's just say I understand what it means to need a second chance." His eyes met Faith's, steady and honest. "I'm not the man who disappointed you, Miss Adams. I keep my promises." Faith studied him, searching for any sign of deception. She found none. Still, caution made her ask, and what would be expected of me, besides housekeeping duties? Cooking, cleaning, mending. Nothing more, he stated firmly. And if at any time you feel uncomfortable or find better prospects in town, you're free to leave. Faith weighed her options, which were painfully few. She could try to find work in town, but with a baby and no references, her chances were slim. She could attempt to return east, but had nothing and no one to return to. Or she could accept this cowboy's offer and pray he was as honorable as he seemed. "I accept your terms, Mr. Quincy," she said finally. "Though I should warn you, I'm a better seamstress than cook." A genuine smile transformed Cole's face. "That's still an improvement over my cooking, Miss Adams." He paid for their meal and led her outside, where his wagon was now hitched to a pair of sturdy bay horses. After helping her settle Emma on her lap, he loaded her bags into the back and climbed up beside her. As the wagon pulled away from Riverside's Main Street, Faith cast one last glance at the town that was supposed to have been her new home with a husband. Instead, she was heading into the unknown with a stranger, a kind stranger, but a stranger nonetheless. "Mr. Quincy," she said softly as the wagon rumbled along the rutted road, "may I ask why you're really doing this?" Cole was silent for so long that Faith thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and thoughtful. "When I saw you standing there with your little one," he said, "something my pa used to say came to mind. He'd tell us, the measure of a man isn't what he has, but what he does for those who have nothing. I reckon you and Emma need someone right now, and it appears you've found me." Faith felt tears prick her eyes at the simple truth in his words. "Then you've both found me," she whispered back, echoing his sentiment. The wagon continued down the road as the setting sun painted the Wyoming sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. And for the first time since stepping off the train, Faith felt a small flicker of hope. The Quincy Ranch came into view just as darkness fell. The main house, a solid two-story structure built of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Lamplight glowed warmly from the windows, and smoke curled from the stone chimney. "My ranch hand, Miguel, must have lit the lamps," Cole explained as he halted the wagon. "He lives in the bunkhouse with the others, but comes by to check on things when I'm in town." Faith could make out several outbuildings, a large barn, and a smaller cabin about 50 yards from the main house. Cole helped her down from the wagon, then gathered her bags. "Let me show you to your cabin first so you can get Emma settled." The cabin was simple but clean, with a main room containing a small cook stove, table with 2 chairs, and a rocking chair near the hearth. A curtained doorway led to a bedroom with a narrow bed covered in a patchwork quilt. The furnishings were sparse but serviceable. "It's not much," Cole said, sounding almost apologetic. "It's perfect," Faith replied honestly. After weeks of uncertainty and the crushing disappointment of the day, the cabin seemed like a sanctuary. "There's firewood stacked outside, and I'll bring some fresh water. The outhouse is just behind, and there's a pump for water. In the morning, I'll show you around properly." Faith nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion. Cole seemed to notice, for he quickly added, "Get some rest. We'll talk more tomorrow." After he left, Faith changed Emma's diaper and nursed her, grateful for the privacy. The baby fell asleep quickly, and Faith arranged her in the center of the bed, using pillows to create a barrier so she wouldn't roll off. She washed her face in the basin of water Cole had brought, changed into her nightgown, and slipped into bed beside her daughter. Despite her fatigue, sleep eluded her as she replayed the day's events. Just this morning, she had been filled with nervous anticipation about meeting her future husband. Now she was in a stranger's cabin, employed as his housekeeper, with no idea what tomorrow would bring. Yet as she listened to Emma's soft breathing, Faith felt an odd sense of peace. Cole Quincy seemed genuinely kind, and for tonight at least, they had shelter, food, and safety. It wasn't the future she had planned, but it was a beginning. Morning arrived with pale sunlight streaming through the cabin's small windows, and the distant sounds of a working ranchman calling to each other, horses nickering, the creak and slam of the barn door. Faith rose quickly, changed and fed Emma, and dressed in her second-best dress, a simple blue cotton with white collar. She wanted to make a good impression on her first day as Cole's housekeeper. A knock at the door revealed Cole holding a covered basket. "Thought you might need provisions for breakfast," he said. "I've got coffee brewing at the house when you're ready." "Thank you. I'll be there shortly." Faith accepted the basket, which contained eggs, bacon, and fresh biscuits. "Take your time. I'll be in the barn until 8 or so." After a simple breakfast, Faith secured Emma in a sling across her chest and made her way to the main house. The morning air was crisp, and the views of the surrounding countryside were breathtaking, rolling grasslands stretching toward distant mountains, the landscape painted in autumn golds and browns. The ranch house was larger than it had appeared in the darkness. Faith entered through the kitchen door, finding a spacious room with a large cookstove, a pine table with 6 chairs, and cupboards that needed organizing. The sink held several unwashed dishes, and the floor clearly needed sweeping, but overall, the space was more orderly than she had expected from a bachelor's home. Faith set Emma on a blanket on the clean part of the floor and set to work, familiarizing herself with the kitchen while tidying. By the time Cole returned, she had washed the dishes, swept the floor, and had coffee and biscuits waiting. "This is a pleasant change," he remarked, removing his hat and washing his hands at the pump sink. "Usually I just grab whatever's quickest before heading out." "Part of my job is making sure you eat properly," Faith replied, pouring him coffee. "Though I should warn you again about my cooking skills. Can you fry bacon without burning it beyond recognition?" "Yes, of course." "Then you're already ahead of me," Cole said with a laugh that transformed his face, erasing the serious lines and making him appear younger. Faith noted for the first time that he was handsome in a rugged way, strong jaw covered in stubble, straight nose, and eyes the color of the Wyoming sky. She quickly averted her gaze, reminding herself that he was her employer, nothing more. "I thought I'd start with a thorough cleaning of the kitchen, then work my way through the rest of the house," she said professionally. "Would that suit?" Cole nodded. "Whatever you think best." "I'm not particular except," he hesitated. "Except the room at the end of the hall upstairs. It's locked. I'd prefer it remain that way." Faith's curiosity was piqued, but she simply nodded. "Of course, your privacy is important." After Cole left to continue his ranch work, Faith explored the rest of the house while keeping an eye on Emma, who was content to roll on her blanket, occasionally sitting up to play with the wooden spoon Faith had given her. The house was well built, with a large living room containing comfortable furniture arranged around a stone fireplace, a small study filled with books and a desk covered in papers, and upstairs, 3 bedrooms. Cole clearly used only one, the largest, with a big bed and masculine furnishings. The other was set up as a guest room, dusty from disuse. The third door at the end of the hall was indeed locked, as Cole had mentioned. Faith spent the day cleaning, stopping occasionally to tend to Emma. By late afternoon, the kitchen gleamed, and she had started on the living room. She was dusting the mantelpiece when she noticed the photographs, a stern-looking older couple who must be Cole's parents, a group picture of what appeared to be Cole with several siblings, and a smaller frame partially hidden behind the others. Curiosity got the better of her, and Faith carefully lifted it. The photograph showed a younger Cole standing beside a pretty woman in a wedding dress, both smiling at the camera. His wife. But where was she now? Cole wore no wedding ring, and everything about the house suggested he lived alone. That was taken 6 years ago. Faith nearly dropped the frame at the sound of Cole's voice behind her. She turned, her cheeks flushing with embarrassment at being caught snooping. "I'm sorry. I was just dusting, and it's all right," Cole said, though his expression had closed off. He crossed the room and took the photograph, looking at it briefly before returning it to its place, this time more prominently displayed. Her name was Charlotte. The past tense told Faith everything. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said softly. Cole nodded once sharply. "It was a long time ago." His tone made it clear the subject was closed. "I came to tell you that I need to ride out to check the north pasture fences. I won't be back until after dark." "I'll have supper waiting," Faith promised. After Cole left, Faith continued cleaning, but her mind kept returning to the photograph and the mystery of Charlotte. Had illness taken her? An accident? And was the locked room somehow connected to her? Faith chided herself for such thoughts. Cole's past was none of her business. Her job was to cook and clean, not uncover her employer's secrets. By evening, Faith had prepared a simple supper of beef stew, using ingredients she found in the pantry. Emma was fed, changed, and sleeping peacefully in a makeshift crib Cole had brought from the barn, an old wooden crate lined with soft blankets. True to his word, Cole returned after dark, bringing the scent of horses and open air with him. He seemed pleasantly surprised by the meal waiting for him. "This smells wonderful," he said, hanging his hat and coat by the door. "It's nothing fancy," Faith replied. "Just a basic stew. After months of my own cooking, this is a feast." They ate in companionable silence, the only sounds being the clink of spoons against bowls and the occasional crackle from the fireplace. Faith found herself studying Cole when he wasn't looking the way his hands, rough from ranch work, handled his utensils with unexpected grace, the thoughtful expression that crossed his face when he gazed into the fire. "Was your day productive?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Found and repaired 3 breaks in the fence line," he answered. "Winter's coming, and I can't afford to lose any cattle to wandering." "Is the ranch large?" 400 acres. "Small compared to some, but it's enough." Pride crept into his voice. "Started with just 50 acres 8 years ago. Built it up bit by bit." "That's impressive," Faith said sincerely. "What about you, Miss Adams? What brought you west as a mail-order bride?" Faith tensed. She'd known the question would come eventually, but she still wasn't prepared to answer it. "Circumstances," she said vaguely. Cole seemed to sense her discomfort. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." "No, it's fair to ask." Faith took a deep breath. "Emma's father was a young man from a wealthy family in my town. We were close, and when I discovered I was with child, he promised to marry me. But when his parents found out, they sent him to Europe instead, left me to face the scandal alone." Cole's expression darkened. Not much of a man, running away from his responsibilities like that. "My parents were devastated by the shame. They didn't cast me out exactly, but it became clear I couldn't stay. After Emma was born, I saw Mr. Jennings' advertisement and thought it might be a fresh start." Faith gave a bitter laugh. "I suppose I'm not very good at choosing men." "The failing isn't yours," Cole said firmly. "Any man worth his salt would stand by his child and the mother of his child." Faith was touched by his conviction. "Thank you for saying that. It's just the truth." Cole pushed his empty bowl away. "And for what it's worth, I think you're brave. Coming all this way alone with a baby, taking a chance on a new life. That takes courage." Faith felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. No one had ever called her brave before. Foolish, reckless, sinful, those were the words her neighbors back home had used. "Will you tell me about Charlotte?" she asked suddenly, then immediately regretted her boldness. "I'm sorry, that's too personal." To her surprise, Cole didn't seem offended. "No, it's a fair question since you'll be living here." He was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Charlotte and I married when I first came to Wyoming. We had the ranch, though it was smaller than just the house and 50 acres. She took sick the second winter, influenza. It swept through half the territory that year." "I'm sorry," Faith whispered. Cole nodded, his eyes distant. "The locked room was hers. A sewing room. I haven't been able to. It's just easier to keep it closed." The silence that followed was heavy with shared understanding of loss. Faith wanted to reach across the table and take his hand, but propriety held her back. "I should check on Emma," she said finally, rising from the table. "Of course." Cole stood as well. "I'll see to the dishes." "That's not necessary, I insist. You've done more than enough today." Faith nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. "Good night then, Mr. Quincy." "Cole," he corrected. "If we're going to be living and working in close quarters, I think we can dispense with formalities." "Cole," Faith repeated. "Then you must call me Faith." His smile was gentle. "Good night, Faith." As Faith walked back to her cabin, Emma sleeping soundly in her arms, she realized that for the first time in months, she felt something like hope. Cole Quincy wasn't the husband she had journeyed west to meet, but perhaps he was the friend she and Emma needed. Days slipped into weeks as October gave way to November, and Faith settled into life at the Quincy Ranch. Her duties as housekeeper kept her busy from dawn till dusk, cooking, cleaning, mending, and caring for Emma, who was growing more active each day, now attempting to crawl and babbling constantly. The weather turned colder, with frost glazing the windows each morning and the occasional snow flurry dusting the grasslands. Cole worked from sunrise to sunset, mending fences, moving cattle to winter pastures, and ensuring the ranch was prepared for the coming winter. Faith found herself looking forward to their evening meals together. Cole was a quiet man, but he proved to be a good listener and occasionally shared stories about his childhood in Missouri, his 4 siblings, and his journey west after the war. He never pressed Faith for more details about her past, which she appreciated. One particularly cold evening in mid-November, Faith had just put Emma to bed in the cabin and was returning to the main house to finish some mending when she heard raised voices coming from the barn. Concerned, she changed direction, pulling her shawl tighter against the biting wind. As she neared the barn, she could make out Cole's voice, uncharacteristically sharp. "I've told you before, Fenton, this land isn't for sale. Not now, not ever." "Don't be a fool, Quincy," replied a second voice, smooth, educated, with an edge of condescension. "Your little spread is right in the middle of what will be the largest cattle operation in the territory. Holdouts only make things difficult for everyone." Faith peered through the barn door to see Cole standing with his arms crossed, facing a well-dressed man in an expensive coat. 2 rough-looking men flanked him, their expressions hostile. "My answer's the same as it was last month, and the month before that," Cole said evenly. "This ranch isn't for sale at any price. Now I suggest you leave before I forget my manners." The well-dressed man, Fenton, smiled coldly. "Think about your future, Quincy. A smart man knows when to take an opportunity. My offer won't last forever." His gaze drifted to where Faith stood partially hidden by the door. "And I see you've acquired some companionship since my last visit. Another reason to consider your position carefully." Cole's expression hardened. "Get off my land, Fenton. Very well, but consider my offer." $5,000 is more than generous for a widower's struggling ranch. Fenton adjusted his gloves. "After all, We both know this place has seen better days since Charlotte's passing." Faith saw Cole's hands clench into fists at the mention of his late wife's name. For a moment she thought he might strike the other man, but he controlled himself. "You have 10 seconds to leave," Cole said, his voice dangerously quiet. Fenton smirked but gestured to his men, and the three of them mounted their horses. "I'll be back, Quincy. One way or another, this land will be part of Blackwater Ranch." Faith stepped aside as they rode out, hoping they hadn't noticed her. After they disappeared down the road, she entered the barn to find Cole leaning against a stall, his expression troubled. "I didn't mean to eavesdrop," Faith said softly. Cole straightened, his face immediately composed. "It's all right. You should probably know about Fenton anyway. He's been trying to buy up all the small ranches in the area for the past year." "Why is your land so important to him?" "Water rights, mostly. I control access to the creek that runs through this part of the valley. Without it, his grand cattle empire would have trouble in dry seasons." Cole ran a hand through his hair. "Plus, I think it's personal now. He's not used to being refused." Faith hesitated, then asked, "Is the ranch truly struggling?" Cole's jaw tightened. "We've had some lean years. Losing some cattle to illness last spring didn't help, but we're not desperate despite what Fenton thinks. He seemed dangerous." "Ambrose Fenton lets others do his dirty work," Cole said grimly. "But yes, he can be dangerous. He's not used to opposition." He forced a smile. "Don't worry about it. Fenton's been making threats for months with no follow-through." Faith wasn't entirely reassured, but she nodded. "I finished the stew for dinner. It should still be warm." "I'll be there shortly. Just need to check on a mare that's close to foaling." As Faith walked back to the house, she couldn't shake her unease. There had been something predatory in Fenton's gaze, both when he looked at Cole and when he noticed her. She wondered how far he would go to get what he wanted. Dinner that night was quieter than usual, Cole clearly preoccupied with thoughts of Fenton's visit. Faith didn't press him, instead focusing on keeping the conversation light, sharing stories of Emma's latest attempts at crawling and the progress she'd made organizing the long-neglected pantry. As they finished their meal, Cole finally seemed to relax, the tension easing from his shoulders. "Thank you, Faith," he said unexpectedly, "for dinner. It was just stew. For not asking more questions about Fenton. For making this place feel like a home again." Faith felt her cheeks warm at his words. "I should be thanking you. You gave Emma and me a place when we had nowhere else to go." Their eyes met across the table, and Faith felt something shift between them, a moment of connection that went beyond employer and employee. Cole looked away first, clearing his throat. "It's getting late. I should walk you back to your cabin." Outside, the night was clear and cold, stars scattered like diamonds across the vast Wyoming sky. They walked in silence, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Emma was already asleep in the makeshift crib Cole had set up in the main house for when Faith worked late. At the cabin door, Faith turned to thank Cole, but the words died on her lips when she saw his expression intense, searching, as if he was seeing her for the first time. "Faith," he said softly, then stopped, seeming to struggle with what he wanted to say. "Yes," she prompted when he remained silent. Cole shook his head slightly. "Nothing, just sleep well." He turned and walked back toward the main house, leaving Faith staring after him, wondering what had just passed between them and why her heart was suddenly beating so rapidly. The following week brought the first major snowstorm of the season. Faith woke to a world transformed, the ranch blanketed in white, snow still falling heavily from a leaden sky. She bundled Emma warmly and hurried to the main house, where Cole was already stoking the kitchen fire to a roaring blaze. "Looks like we're in for a real Wyoming winter," he said, taking Emma from Faith's arms so she could remove her snow-dusted coat. "The pass to town will likely be blocked for a few days. Are we prepared?" Faith asked, concerned. "Do we have enough supplies?" Cole nodded. "The pantry's well stocked, thanks to your organizing. We've got plenty of firewood and the livestock are secure in the barn and shelters." He bounced Emma gently, making the baby giggle. "We'll be just fine, little one." "Yes, we will." Faith's heart warmed at the sight of Cole with her daughter. Over the past weeks, he'd grown increasingly comfortable with Emma, often taking her while Faith prepared dinner or finished her chores. The baby had formed a clear attachment to him, reaching for him whenever he entered a room. "I thought I'd bake bread today," Faith said, moving to the pantry to gather ingredients. "It seems like a good day for it with the storm." "That sounds wonderful," Cole agreed. "I'll need to check the barn after breakfast, make sure the roof is holding with the weight of the snow." The day passed in a comfortable domestic rhythm, Faith kneading dough and preparing hearty meals while Cole came and went, tending to necessary ranch tasks despite the weather. By evening, the storm had intensified, wind howling around the eaves of the house and temperatures plummeting. After dinner, instead of returning to her cabin as usual, Faith remained in the warm kitchen, sewing by lamplight while Cole sat at the table going over his ledgers. Emma slept in her crib nearby, untroubled by the storm raging outside. "I don't think you should go back to the cabin tonight," Cole said, looking up from his figures. "The storm's too fierce, and the temperature's dropping by the hour." Faith glanced toward the window, where snow was driving against the glass. The thought of bundling Emma up and trudging through knee-deep snow in the dark was daunting. "You could take my room," Cole offered. "I'll sleep down here by the fire." "I couldn't put you out of your bed," Faith protested. "I insist. It's the practical solution." Faith hesitated, aware of how improper it would be to spend the night under Cole's roof, even with him sleeping downstairs. But practicality won out over propriety. The storm showed no signs of abating, and Emma's safety had to come first. "Thank you," she said finally. "Just for tonight, until the storm passes." When bedtime came, Cole showed her to his room, a simply furnished space with a large bed covered in a heavy quilt, a chest of drawers, and a small writing desk. The room smelled of him leather, soap, and the faint scent of hay. "There are extra blankets in the chest if you need them," Cole said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "And I'll keep the fire going downstairs so the house should stay warm enough." "Thank you," Faith said again, feeling strangely shy. "Good night, Cole." "Good night, Faith." "Good night, little Emma." After he left, Faith settled Emma in the center of the big bed, surrounding her with pillows as usual. She changed into her nightgown, feeling oddly intimate being in Cole's personal space, sleeping in his bed. As she slipped under the covers, she found herself wondering what it would be like if circumstances were different, if she were here as his wife rather than his housekeeper. The thought startled her. When had she begun thinking of Cole as anything more than her employer? Yet she couldn't deny that her feelings for him had grown complicated. She admired his quiet strength, his kindness to Emma, his unfailing courtesy to herself. And sometimes, when he looked at her across the dinner table, or when their hands accidentally touched while passing dishes, she felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with gratitude. Faith pushed such thoughts away firmly. Cole was still mourning his wife. That much was clear from the locked room and the way he sometimes gazed at the photograph on the mantel. Besides, she had Emma to think about and her own future to secure. Romantic notions had no place in her current situation. Still, as she drifted off to sleep in Cole's bed, surrounded by his scent, Faith couldn't help imagining a different life, one where she belonged here not as an employee, but as something more. Morning arrived with sunshine streaming through the windows, the storm having blown itself out during the night. Faith woke to find Emma already awake, contentedly playing with the fringe of a pillow. The house was warm, evidence that Cole had indeed kept the fire stoked all night. Faith dressed quickly and carried Emma downstairs, where she found Cole asleep in the armchair by the fire, a blanket draped loosely over him. He looked younger in sleep, the lines of responsibility smoothed from his face. Faith stood watching him for a moment, reluctant to wake him but knowing he would be stiff and sore if he slept much longer in that position. "Cole," she said softly, touching his shoulder. He woke instantly, his eyes flying open. For a moment confusion clouded his face, then recognition dawned. "Faith, is it morning already?" "Yes, and the storm has passed. You must be uncomfortable after sleeping in that chair all night." Cole stretched, wincing slightly. "I've slept in worse places." He smiled at Emma, who was reaching for him. "Good morning to you too, little one." Faith handed the baby to him and moved toward the kitchen. "I'll start breakfast. You must be hungry." "Starving," Cole admitted, following her with Emma in his arms. "But first, I need to check on the livestock." The hands will have seen to the feeding, but after a storm like that, there's always something that needs attention. "Go ahead. I'll have coffee waiting when you return." The day settled into its normal pattern, though Faith found herself thinking about the previous night, not just the practicality of sheltering from the storm, but the feeling of safety and rightness she'd experienced under Cole's roof. It troubled her how quickly she'd grown attached to this place, to this life, to Cole himself. That evening, with the snow still deep but the skies clear, Cole insisted on escorting Faith and Emma back to their cabin. The path he had shoveled was narrow, forcing them to walk close together, their arms occasionally brushing. Faith was acutely aware of his presence beside her, solid and reassuring in the cold night air. At the cabin door, Cole hesitated. "If you need anything during the night, if it gets too cold or you hear anything concerning, don't hesitate to come to the house." "We'll be fine," Faith assured him. "The cabin is quite warm with the stove going." Cole nodded, but still seemed reluctant to leave. "Faith," he began, then stopped, a conflict evident in his expression. "Yes, I've been thinking," he said slowly. "With winter setting in, it might be more practical for you and Emma to move into the main house. The guest room is larger than your cabin, and you wouldn't have to trudge through the snow each day." Faith's heart skipped. "That would be convenient," she said carefully. "But wouldn't it seem improper? A single woman and her child living in a bachelor's home." "Perhaps," Cole acknowledged. "But this is the frontier. Practicality often outweighs convention." He met her eyes directly. "I promise you, your reputation would be safe with me." Faith believed him. In all their time together, Cole had never shown anything but respect and kindness. Still, she hesitated, wondering if living under the same roof might make it harder to maintain the professional boundaries between them, boundaries that already seemed to be blurring. "May I think about it?" she asked. "Of course." Cole stepped back, tipping his hat. "Good night, Faith." "Good night, Cole." Inside the cabin, as Faith prepared for bed, she wondered if Cole's offer was purely practical or if perhaps he too felt the growing connection between them. The thought both thrilled and frightened her. She had come to Wyoming expecting to be a wife, only to be abandoned. Now, she found herself developing feelings for a man who had hired her as his housekeeper, a man still haunted by his past. What future could there possibly be in that? The next morning, Faith was awakened by urgent knocking. She opened the door to find Miguel, Cole's ranch foreman, his expression grave. "Miss Faith, you need to come quick. It's Mr. Quincy, he's hurt." Faith's heart lurched. "What happened?" "Fence broke under the weight of snow. Cattle got out." He went to round them up, and his horse stepped in a hole hidden by snow. They both went down hard. Fear propelled Faith into action. She quickly dressed Emma and herself, wrapped them both in warm layers, and followed Miguel to the main house. There she found Cole stretched on the sofa, his face pale with pain, his right leg splinted with pieces of wood. "Cole," Faith handed Emma to Miguel and rushed to his side. "How badly are you hurt?" "Broken leg," Cole grunted. "Maybe some ribs too, nothing that won't heal." "We need to get the doctor from town." Cole shook his head. "Pass is still blocked, won't be clear for days." Faith turned to Miguel. "Has the bone been set?" "As best we could," the foreman replied. "Mr. Quincy talked us through it, said he'd seen it done in the war." Faith nodded, mentally cataloging what needed to be done. "We'll need willow bark tea for the pain, and the leg should be elevated. Miguel, please bring more pillows from upstairs." As Miguel left to comply, Faith gently touched Cole's forehead, checking for fever. His skin was warm, but not alarmingly so. "You should have been more careful," she chided softly. Cole managed a weak smile. "Telling a rancher to be careful is like telling the wind not to blow." "Well, you're not going anywhere for a while. A broken leg takes weeks to heal properly." "I can't be laid up that long. The ranch will still be here," Faith interrupted firmly. "Miguel and the other hands know their jobs, and I'll help however I can." Cole looked like he wanted to argue but was too exhausted to continue. Faith took advantage of his silence to begin organizing his care, preparing willow bark tea, sending one of the hands for clean linen to make bandages, and settling Emma in her crib, where she could keep an eye on her while tending to Cole. By evening, Cole was running a fever, his body's response to the trauma. Faith sat by his side through the night, cooling his forehead with damp cloths and ensuring he took regular sips of water and medicinal tea. Emma, seemingly sensing the gravity of the situation, was unusually quiet, content to play with the wooden toys Cole had carved for her over the past weeks. As dawn broke, Cole's fever finally broke as well. He opened his eyes to find Faith dozing in the chair beside him, her hand still resting on his arm. The sight filled him with an emotion he couldn't immediately identify, something warm and profound that made his chest ache in a way that had nothing to do with his injured ribs. "Faith," he said hoarsely. She stirred immediately, blinking sleep from her eyes. "Cole, how do you feel?" "Like I've been trampled by a herd of cattle," he admitted. "But better than last night." Relief washed over her face. "Your fever's broken. That's a good sign." "You stayed all night," Cole said, a question in his voice. "Of course I did. You needed care." Their eyes met, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been growing since that first day at the Riverside Cafe. The moment was broken by Emma's morning babble from her crib. Faith rose to attend to her daughter, but Cole caught her hand before she could move away. "Thank you," he said simply. Faith squeezed his hand in response, then went to retrieve Emma, who squealed with delight at seeing Cole awake. The following weeks brought a new rhythm to life at the Quincy Ranch. Faith and Emma moved into the main house temporarily, Faith taking the guest room while Cole remained downstairs, unable to navigate the stairs with his splinted leg. She divided her time between her regular duties, caring for Cole, and helping Miguel manage the ranch affairs that couldn't wait. Cole proved to be a difficult patient at first, chafing at his confinement and attempting to do more than his injuries allowed. Faith met his stubbornness with firm patience, refusing to let him jeopardize his recovery with premature activity. "The cattle can survive without your personal attention for a few weeks," she informed him one day when she caught him attempting to hobble to the door. "Miguel reports to you daily, and nothing requires your immediate presence." "I'm not used to idleness," Cole grumbled, allowing her to guide him back to the sofa. "Then make yourself useful in ways that don't involve walking," Faith suggested. "You could teach Emma some new words. She's quite fond of horse and cow already." Cole's expression softened as he looked at Emma, who was playing on a quilt nearby. "Come here, little one," he called, and Emma happily crawled to him. Faith watched as Cole patiently repeated simple words to Emma, who attempted to mimic the sounds with varying degrees of success. The scene made her heart swell with an emotion she was becoming increasingly unable to deny love. Not just gratitude or friendship, but a deep, abiding love for this quiet, honorable man who had taken her and Emma in when they had nothing. December arrived, bringing with it thoughts of Christmas. Faith had always loved the holiday, and though she knew their celebration would be modest, she wanted to make it special, particularly for Emma's first Christmas. One afternoon, while Cole dozed, Faith explored the attic, searching for any Christmas decorations the Quincy's might have stored away. In a dusty corner, she discovered a small wooden box marked Christmas in neat handwriting that must have been Charlotte's. With some trepidation, Faith opened the box to find simple decorations: hand-carved wooden ornaments, lengths of red ribbon, and several beeswax candles. At the bottom lay a small bundle wrapped in tissue paper. Faith carefully unwrapped it to reveal a delicate porcelain angel, perfect for the top of a Christmas tree. That was Charlotte's favorite. Faith startled at Cole's voice, turning to find him standing in the attic doorway, leaning heavily on a crutch the ranch hands had fashioned for him. "Cole, you shouldn't be up here, your leg." "I heard movement overhead," he explained. "Wanted to see what you were doing." Faith looked down at the angel in her hands. "I'm sorry. I was looking for Christmas decorations. I should have asked first." To her surprise, Cole smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "No need to apologize. They should be used, not gathering dust up here." Faith carefully rewrapped the angel. "Are you sure? I don't want to intrude on your memories." Cole moved closer, awkward on his crutch. "You and Emma have made new memories in this house. Good ones, I think." He hesitated. "I think Charlotte would have liked that. She always said a house needs a family to be a home." The words hung between them, laden with meaning. Faith held Cole's gaze, scarcely daring to breathe, wondering if he realized what he'd implied, that she and Emma were becoming his family. "I'd like to use these for Christmas then," Faith said softly. "If you're certain." Cole nodded. "I am. Let me help you carry the box down." "You'll do no such thing," Faith said firmly, reverting to her role as his caretaker. "Not on that leg. Go back downstairs, and I'll bring these down shortly." Cole looked like he might argue, then chuckled. "Yes, madam." He turned to navigate the stairs carefully, leaving Faith with the box of decorations and a heart full of conflicting emotions. That evening, after Emma was asleep in the cradle that had been moved to Faith's room, Cole called Faith into the living room where he sat in his usual chair by the fire, his injured leg propped on a footstool. "There's something I want to show you," he said, holding out a key. "It's to the locked room." Faith stared at the key, understanding its significance. "Cole, you don't have to. I want to," he interrupted gently. "I've been thinking about it for weeks. It's time." Faith accepted the key with a sense of solemnity, aware that Cole was entrusting her with something precious: access to the part of his past he had kept literally locked away. Together, they made their way upstairs, Cole moving slowly with his crutch. At the door at the end of the hall, Faith hesitated, looking to Cole for confirmation. At his nod, she inserted the key and turned it, hearing the lock click open for the first time in years. The room beyond was small but charming, with a window overlooking the ranch lands. A sewing table sat beneath the window, and shelves lined one wall, holding fabric, threads, and other sewing notions. In one corner stood a rocking cradle, lovingly crafted from polished wood. Faith understood immediately. "Charlotte was expecting," she said softly. Cole nodded, his voice rough with emotion. "She was 7 months along when the influenza took her. We lost them both." Faith's heart ached for him. "Oh, Cole, I'm so sorry." "For a long time I couldn't bear to come in here," Cole said, moving to touch the cradle gently. It was easier to keep the door locked, to keep the grief contained. But lately, since you and Emma came. He looked up at Faith, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and hope. "You've reminded me that life goes on, that there can be joy again." Faith moved to his side, taking his hand in hers. "Thank you for sharing this with me, for trusting me with this part of your past." Cole's fingers tightened around hers. "I've been thinking, Faith, about the future." He took a deep breath. "Your arrangement here was meant to be temporary until you found something better, but I'm hoping you might consider making it permanent." Faith's heart raced. "As your housekeeper?" "No," Cole met her gaze steadily. "As my wife." The word hung in the air between them, momentous and transformative. Faith felt dizzy with the sudden shift in her world. "I know it's not romantic," Cole continued when she remained silent. "And perhaps it's too soon. You came here expecting to marry another man, and I've been living in the past for too long. But I care for you, Faith. And I love Emma as if she were my own. I want to give you both a home, a real home, not just employment." Tears filled Faith's eyes. "Cole." A crash from downstairs interrupted whatever she might have said. They both turned toward the sound, alarmed. "Stay here," Cole ordered, moving toward the door with surprising speed despite his injury. "You're in no condition to," Faith began, but Cole was already heading for the stairs. Faith hurried after him, fear gripping her heart. As they descended, they could hear multiple voices in the kitchen, angry and demanding. In the kitchen doorway, they found Miguel held at gunpoint by two rough-looking men, the same men who had accompanied Ambrose Fenton during his visit to the ranch. Fenton himself stood by the table, examining papers from Cole's desk drawer. "Ah, Quincy," Fenton said, looking up with a cold smile. "I see rumors of your accident weren't exaggerated. How unfortunate." "Get out of my house, Fenton," Cole growled, gripping his crutch tightly. Fenton's gaze shifted to Faith, his smile turning predatory. "And the lovely Miss Adams. I've been curious about you. A mail-order bride abandoned at the station, I hear. Quite the scandal in Riverside." Faith stiffened at his words, wondering how he knew her story and what else he might know. "Leave her out of this," Cole warned. "Your business is with me. Indeed it is." Fenton held up a document. "I came to make one final offer before things turn unpleasant. $10,000 for the ranch, double my previous offer. The answer is still no." Fenton sighed theatrically. "I was afraid you'd say that, which is why I took the liberty of bringing some persuasion." He nodded to one of his men, who cocked his pistol against Miguel's temple. "You won't shoot him," Cole said, though his face had paled. "Even you aren't that stupid, Fenton. Murder would bring the law down on you hard." "Murder? No, this would clearly be self-defense. My men and I caught your Mexican foreman stealing from you. You were injured and couldn't defend yourself. We, as concerned citizens, intervened." Fenton smiled thinly. "Who would question it? Especially when half the county officials are in my pocket." Faith saw the calculation in Cole's eyes, weighing his options, looking for a way out that wouldn't end in bloodshed. She remembered Emma sleeping upstairs and felt cold fear wash over her. "The deed," Cole said finally. "It's in the safe in my study. The combination is 182436. Fenton's smile widened. "Very sensible, Quincy. Jenkins, go retrieve it." One of the men left the kitchen, heading toward Cole's study. Faith caught Cole's eye, confused by his sudden capitulation. He gave her an almost imperceptible nod that she didn't understand but trusted nonetheless. Minutes passed in tense silence until Jenkins returned, his expression thunderous. "Safe's empty," he growled. "Nothing but some letters and a few dollars." Fenton's smile vanished. "Where is it, Quincy?" "Not here," Cole replied calmly. "After your last visit, I took precautions. The deed is with my lawyer in Cheyenne, along with a sworn statement about your threats. If anything happens to me, Miguel, or anyone else on this ranch, that statement goes straight to the territorial governor." Fenton's face contorted with rage. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Care to risk it?" Cole's voice was steady despite the danger. "The governor isn't one of your pocket officials, Fenton, and he takes a dim view of land grabbing and intimidation." Faith watched the standoff, her heart pounding. She believed Cole it was exactly the kind of prudent step he would take, but she wasn't sure Fenton would be convinced. The tense moment was shattered by a sound from upstairs, Emma crying, awakened from her sleep by the commotion below. Fenton's head snapped toward the sound. "The baby." "Bring it down," he ordered Jenkins. "Another piece of leverage might be useful." "No." Faith moved to block the doorway, terror giving her courage. "You will not touch my child." Jenkins raised his gun, but before he could take another step, the kitchen door burst open, admitting a blast of cold air and 3 men with rifles, Cole's ranch hands, returning from their evening duties. The next moments were chaos. Seeing their boss threatened, the hands didn't hesitate. Rifles were leveled, demands for surrender shouted. Fenton's men, outnumbered and outgunned, slowly lowered their weapons. "This isn't over, Quincy," Fenton spat, but his bravado was hollow. He knew he had lost this round. "It is for tonight," Cole replied. "Boys, escort Mr. Fenton and his friends to the property line. Make sure they understand that trespassing again would be unwise." As the ranch hands led the intruders away, Cole sagged against the doorframe, the strain of standing so long on his injured leg finally taking its toll. Faith rushed to support him, helping him to a chair while Miguel went to check on Emma, whose cries had intensified. "I'm sorry," Cole said once they were alone. "I never meant to put you and Emma in danger. Fenton's never gone this far before." "It's not your fault," Faith assured him, her hands trembling as reaction set in. "You couldn't have known he would break in." Cole covered her shaking hands with his own. "No, but I should have been better prepared. After his last visit, I suspected he might try something." He looked toward the stairs where Miguel was descending with a now quiet Emma. "Is she all right?" "Just startled," Miguel confirmed, handing Emma to Faith. "I will check the house and grounds, make sure they're truly gone." After Miguel left, Faith held Emma close, the baby's warm weight reassuring against her pounding heart. "What will happen now?" she asked Cole. "Fenton will back off for a while. He's a businessman at heart, and tonight showed him that taking my ranch by force would be costly." Cole sighed, rubbing his thigh above the splint. "But he won't give up entirely. Men like him never do." Faith nodded, rocking Emma gently. The events of the night had shaken her deeply, but they had also clarified something important. "Before we were interrupted," she said quietly, "you asked me something." Cole's expression became guarded, as if he expected rejection. "I did, and I understand if tonight has changed your mind. No one would blame you for wanting a more peaceful life than I can offer." Faith shook her head. "Actually, it's made my decision easier." She met his gaze steadily. "Yes, Cole, I will marry you." Surprise, then joy transformed Cole's face. "You will, even after all this." "Because of all this," Faith corrected. "You were willing to sacrifice everything you've built to protect Miguel. You made plans to protect the ranch, and most importantly, your first thought when there was danger was for Emma and me." She smiled, feeling certainty settle in her heart. That's the kind of man I want as my husband, as Emma's father. Cole reached for her hand, drawing her closer. I promise you, Faith, I will spend every day trying to be worthy of that trust. I know you will. Faith leaned down, and their lips met in a gentle, affirming kiss, their first, but one that carried the promise of many more to come. Emma babbled happily between them, as if giving her own approval to the new future taking shape before her. The weeks leading up to Christmas passed in a whirlwind of activity and emotion. Cole's leg healed steadily, allowing him to move about more freely, though Faith insisted he continue to use the crutch to avoid re-injury. The ranch hands maintained extra vigilance, but Fenton and his men did not return, suggesting that Cole's precautions had indeed given the land barren pause. News of Cole and Faith's engagement spread quickly through the small community. Miguel and the other hands offered hearty congratulations, while in town, reactions were mixed. Some expressed genuine happiness for Cole's newfound chance at family life, while others whispered about the impropriety of his marrying his housekeeper, especially one with a child born out of wedlock. Faith found she cared little for the gossip. After everything she had endured, the shame back east, the journey west, Harold's abandonment, and now Fenton's threats, the opinions of strangers seemed trivial compared to the joy she had found with Cole. They decided to marry before Christmas, a simple ceremony in the Riverside church with only Miguel, the ranch hands, and a few of Cole's friends from town as witnesses. Faith wore her best dress, a deep blue wool that Cole insisted on buying for her when they visited town to speak with the minister. "You don't need to spend your money on a new dress," Faith had protested. "What I have is perfectly serviceable." "I want to," Cole had replied. "Besides, it matches your eyes." Now, as Faith prepared for her wedding day, she smoothed the soft fabric of the blue dress and smiled at her reflection in the mirror. She looked different than she had 2 months ago, less gaunt, her eyes brighter, her posture straighter. Happiness, she realized, had transformed her as surely as the Wyoming winter had transformed the landscape outside. A soft knock at the door preceded Emma's excited babble as Miguel's wife, Alina, entered with the baby in her arms. Alina had come to help with the wedding preparations and had quickly bonded with Emma. "She is all ready," Alina announced, presenting Emma in the white dress Faith had painstakingly sewn from fabric remnants found in Charlotte's sewing room. "And looking very beautiful, yes." "Very beautiful," Faith agreed, taking her daughter. Emma immediately reached for the simple pearl pendant Cole had given Faith as an early wedding gift, a family heirloom that had belonged to his mother. "And you," Alina continued, adjusting Faith's hair, "will make Senor Cole very happy today." Faith smiled, nervousness and joy mingling in her stomach. "I hope so. I know so," Alina said confidently. "The way he looks at you, it is how a man should look at the woman he loves." Love. The word still amazed Faith. After believing herself unworthy of it for so long, to find it here, in this remote Wyoming ranch with a man who had been a stranger just months ago, seemed miraculous. The ride to town was cold but clear, the December sun creating diamond sparkles on the fresh snow. Cole drove the wagon, dressed in his best suit with a new hat, his face solemn but his eyes alight whenever they rested on Faith. Emma sat between them, bundled in blankets against the cold, contentedly chewing on the wooden horse Cole had carved for her. The Riverside church was small but warm, festooned with evergreen boughs and red berries for the Christmas season. As Faith walked down the short aisle with Emma in her arms, she saw only Cole waiting for her at the altar, his expression one of such profound happiness that it brought tears to her eyes. The ceremony was brief. the minister's words familiar and comforting. When Cole spoke his vows, his voice was steady and sure, as if he had been waiting his whole life to say these words to her. When Faith's turn came, she handed Emma to Alina and took both of Cole's hands in hers. "I, Faith Adams, take thee, Cole Quincy, to be my lawfully wedded husband," she began, her voice clear despite the emotion filling her chest. "To have and to hold from this day forward for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. With this ring I thee wed," Cole said, sliding a simple gold band onto her finger. It had been his mother's, he'd told her, saved for the woman he would spend his life with. "You may kiss the bride," the minister pronounced, and Cole leaned forward, his lips meeting Faith's in a kiss that sealed their union gentle but filled with promise. "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Cole Quincy," the minister announced to the small gathering, and a cheer went up from the ranch hands. After accepting congratulations, the newly married couple and their guests enjoyed a celebratory meal at the Riverside Hotel, where the proprietor had prepared a special dinner in honor of the occasion. There was laughter, toasts, and even dancing when one of the hands produced a fiddle and struck up a lively tune. Cole, still mindful of his healing leg, nevertheless insisted on one dance with his bride. "Mrs. Quincy," he said formally, extending his hand, "would you do me the honor?" Faith laughed, a sound of pure joy, and stepped into his arms for a slow waltz. "How does it feel?" she asked. Being married again, Cole's arms tightened around her. "Like coming home after a long journey," he said softly. "Like finding something I thought was lost forever." The honesty in his words moved her deeply. "I never thought I would have this," Faith admitted. "After everything that happened, I believed that part of my life was over. And now I believe in second chances." She smiled up at him. "For both of us." The sun was setting as they departed for the ranch, casting the snow-covered landscape in hues of pink and gold. Emma slept soundly in Faith's arms, worn out from the excitement of the day. The ranch hands had gone ahead to give the newlyweds privacy, though Miguel had assured them everything would be properly tended to in their absence. At the ranch, Cole surprised Faith by lifting her down from the wagon and carrying her across the threshold of the house, Emma still nestled in her arms. "Your leg," Faith protested, though she made no move to extricate herself from his embrace. "Is perfectly fine for carrying my wife and daughter into their home," Cole assured her, setting her gently on her feet in the living room. "Their home." The words resonated within Faith as she looked around the room, now decorated with Charlotte's Christmas ornaments and the fresh greenery she and Cole had gathered from the woods. The house that had once felt like a temporary refuge now truly felt like home. Cole built up the fire while Faith put Emma to bed in the cradle. They had moved to the main bedroom, what was now their bedroom. When she returned downstairs, she found Cole waiting with 2 glasses of the special wine Miguel had given them as a wedding gift. "To new beginnings," Cole toasted, touching his glass to hers. "To family," Faith added, sipping the sweet red wine. They sat together before the fire, talking quietly about the day, about their plans for the ranch, about Emma's first steps which seemed imminent given her increasing attempts to pull herself up on furniture. It was a domestic scene, ordinary in its contentment, extraordinary in what it represented for both of them, a second chance at happiness neither had expected to find. Later, as Faith stood before the bedroom mirror, removing the pins from her hair, she caught Cole's reflection watching her from the doorway, his expression one of wonder. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. Cole crossed the room to stand behind her, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. That I'm the luckiest man in Wyoming territory. His eyes met hers in the mirror. When Charlotte died, I thought that part of my life was over. I never imagined I could feel this way again. Faith turned to face him, reaching up to touch his cheek. I understand. When I was left at the station with Emma, I thought all my dreams were finished. But now we have new dreams, Cole finished for her. Together. Their kiss was different from those they had shared before, deeper, unhurried, filled with promise. Faith felt warmth spread through her as Cole's arms encircled her, drawing her closer. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness between them, only the natural progression of love finding its fullest expression. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear, sunlight streaming through the bedroom windows to find Faith and Cole still wrapped in each other's arms. The events of the previous night had sealed their union in the most intimate way, erasing any lingering doubts either might have harbored about their hasty marriage. Emma's babbling from the cradle brought them both to wakefulness. Cole reached for the baby, bringing her into the bed between them where she happily played with the buttons of his nightshirt. "Merry Christmas, Mrs. Quincy," Cole said, his voice still rough from sleep. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Quincy," Faith replied, unable to keep the smile from her face. "And Merry Christmas, Miss Emma." Emma responded with an enthusiastic "bah," which made both adults laugh. "I think she's saying she's ready for breakfast," Cole suggested, swinging his legs over the side of the bed and reaching for his clothes. "I'll prepare something special," Faith promised. It is Christmas, after all. Downstairs, they found that Miguel and Alina had left a basket on the porch containing freshly baked bread, preserves, and a small wooden toy for Emma, a thoughtful gesture giving the newlyweds privacy while ensuring they had something special for their first Christmas breakfast. After eating, they gathered around the small pine tree Cole had cut and set up in the corner of the living room. There were few presents: a new hat for Cole from Faith, a locket containing a small family photograph for Faith from Cole, and several handmade toys for Emma, but the simplicity only emphasized the true gift they had found in each other. As Emma played with her new toys on the rug before the fire, Cole pulled Faith to his side on the sofa. "I have one more gift for you," he said, "though it's not something I can wrap." Faith looked up at him curiously. "What is it?" Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. "This is the deed to the ranch," he explained, opening it to show her. "I've had it amended to include your name. The Quincy Ranch belongs to both of us now." Faith stared at the document, stunned by his gesture. "Cole, you didn't have to. I wanted to," he interrupted gently. "What's mine is yours now, Faith. I want you to know that this is truly your home, not just a place where you work." Tears filled Faith's eyes as she accepted the deed. "Our home," she corrected, leaning into his embrace. "For all three of us." As if understanding the significance of the moment, Emma crawled to them, pulling herself up on Cole's knees and babbling excitedly. "I think she wants to say something," Faith laughed, wiping away her tears. "Pa," Emma declared suddenly, looking directly at Cole. "Pa." Cole froze, his expression one of astonishment. "Did she just—" "She did," Faith confirmed, her heart swelling with love for both her daughter and her husband. "She called you Pa." Cole gathered Emma into his arms, his eyes suspiciously bright. "That's right, little one," he said hoarsely. "I'm your pa now." Faith watched as Emma patted Cole's face, repeating "pa" with increasing confidence. It was the perfect gift, this moment of connection, of family being formed not by blood but by love and choice. Later, as twilight fell on their first Christmas as a family, Faith stood at the window watching snow begin to fall once more. Cole joined her, slipping his arm around her waist. "Happy?" he asked simply. Faith leaned against him, content in a way she had never imagined possible when she'd stepped off that train in Riverside just 2 months earlier. "Completely," she answered truthfully. "And you?" Cole's answer was to turn her gently in his arms and kiss her, a kiss that spoke of belonging, of promises kept, of a future filled with possibility. "I have everything I need right here," he said when they parted. "You, Emma, our home. What more could any man ask for?" As they stood together watching the snow transform the world outside into a glistening wonderland, Faith reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had come west seeking security and found love instead. She had been abandoned and then found, not just by Cole but by herself as well, finding strength and purpose she hadn't known she possessed. The mail-order bride who had been abandoned with her baby had indeed found the cowboy who claimed them both as his own. But more than that, they had all found what they truly needed, not just shelter or employment or family, but love in its purest form, unconditional, unexpected, and unending. Spring arrived in Wyoming territory with its usual capriciousness, warm, golden days interspersed with sudden snowstorms and biting winds. By April, however, the land had firmly committed to renewal. The pastures surrounding the Quincy Ranch were greening, calves frolicked alongside their mothers, and the creek that gave the property its value ran high with snowmelt. Faith stood on the porch, watching Emma toddle after a butterfly in the yard, her little legs now steady enough for short independent journeys. At 10 months, Emma was developing, quickly walking, attempting new words daily, and showing a fearlessness that both delighted and terrified her parents. "Be careful, sweetheart," Faith called as Emma veered too close to a muddy patch. The child redirected, giggling at her mother's warning. The sound of hoofbeats drew Faith's attention to the lane leading to the main road. Cole was returning from town, where he had gone to mail letters and purchase supplies. His leg had healed completely, though it sometimes troubled him in damp whether a small price to pay, he always said, for the happiness he had found in its aftermath. "Pa!" Emma squealed, abandoning the butterfly to toddle toward the approaching horse. Cole dismounted quickly, sweeping his daughter into his arms before she could reach the horse's hooves. "Hello, little miss," he said, kissing her rosy cheek. "Have you been good for your mama today?" "Always," Faith answered for her, smiling as Cole carried Emma to the porch. His kiss for Faith was brief but tender, a familiar greeting that still managed to send warmth through her body. "Any news in town?" Faith asked as they entered the house together. Cole's expression turned serious. "Actually, yes. Fenton's men were at the saloon, drinking heavily and talking too much." Faith tensed immediately. Since their confrontation before Christmas, Ambrose Fenton had maintained his distance from the Quincy Ranch, though rumors occasionally reached them of his continued interest in acquiring the property. "What were they saying?" she asked, setting Emma on the rug with her toys. "Fenton's bringing in more cattle from Texas next month. Plans to graze them on the North Valley." Faith frowned. "But that's open range. He can't stop others from using it." "No, but he can overwhelm it," Cole explained, removing his hat and coat. "Put so many cattle there that no one else can use it effectively. It's a common tactic for men like him." "What does it mean for us?" Cole sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It means our access to summer grazing will be limited. We'll need to find alternatives." Faith nodded, considering the problem. In the months since their marriage, she had learned a great deal about ranching, taking a keen interest in all aspects of the operation. Cole had been surprised at first by her questions and suggestions, but had quickly come to value her perspective. "What about the east pasture?" she suggested. "You mentioned it's underused because of the distance from the main house." It would mean building a line shack for the hands to use, Cole mused, but it could work. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Cole opened it to find Miguel, his expression troubled. "Riders coming, patron," the foreman reported. 6 men moving fast. Cole's jaw tightened. "Get the men together. No one does anything foolish, but I want them ready." As Miguel hurried to comply, Cole turned to Faith. "Take Emma upstairs. Stay there until I call for you." Faith wanted to protest, to insist on standing beside him, but the thought of Emma's safety overrode her instincts. She gathered her daughter and quickly ascended the stairs, pausing at the landing to look back at Cole, who was checking the rifle he kept by the door. "Be careful," she called softly. Cole nodded, his expression grim but determined. "Always." From the bedroom window, Faith watched as 6 riders approached the house, their horses kicking up dust from the yard. She recognized Ambrose Fenton at their head, his elegant clothing contrasting with the rough appearance of his companions. Cole stepped onto the porch to meet them, his posture relaxed but alert. Miguel and 3 other ranch hands positioned themselves nearby, rifles visible but not aimed. Faith couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see Fenton gesticulating, his face flushed with anger. Cole remained still, his responses apparently measured. After several minutes, Fenton produced a document which he thrust toward Cole. Cole took it, read it, then calmly folded it and handed it back. Whatever Cole said next caused Fenton's face to darken further. The land baron turned his horse abruptly and gestured to his men. As they prepared to depart, Fenton delivered what appeared to be a final warning, pointing first at Cole, then sweeping his arm to encompass the entire ranch. Then the riders galloped away, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Faith waited until Cole entered the house before descending the stairs, Emma balanced on her hip. "What did he want?" she asked. Cole's expression was a mixture of anger and grim satisfaction. "To deliver a final notice that he's claiming water rights to the creek. Says he has documentation proving prior claim." "Can he do that?" "Not legally," Cole replied. "Our deed is clear about the water rights, but he's counting on intimidation or expensive legal battles to force us out." Faith set Emma down in her play area and moved to Cole's side. "What did you tell him?" A smile touched Cole's lips. "That his timing was unfortunate, as I just received confirmation from the Territorial Land Office that our water rights have been formally registered and confirmed, and that any attempt to interfere with them would result in immediate legal action with the full backing of the territorial government." "Is that true?" Faith asked, surprised. Cole nodded. "I've been working on securing those registrations since before Christmas. The final papers came through last week. That's what I went to town to collect today." Faith felt a surge of pride in her husband's foresight. "So Fenton has no legal recourse?" "None," Cole confirmed. "Though that doesn't mean he won't try other tactics. Men like him don't give up easily." "Neither do men like you," Faith pointed out, resting her hand on his arm. "We'll face whatever comes together." Cole covered her hand with his own, his expression softening as he looked down at her. "Have I told you today how grateful I am that you were abandoned at Riverside Station?" Faith laughed despite the tension of the moment. "That's a terrible thing to be grateful for, perhaps," Cole acknowledged with a smile, "but it brought you to me, you and Emma." His gaze shifted to their daughter, who was contentedly stacking wooden blocks. "And that makes me the luckiest man in Wyoming territory." Faith rose on her toes to kiss him, a brief but heartfelt gesture. "We're the lucky ones," she whispered against his lips. That night, after Emma was asleep, Faith and Cole sat on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear spring sky. These quiet evenings had become a cherished ritual, a time for them to share the day's events and their plans for the future. "I've been thinking," Cole said, his hand finding Faith's in the darkness. "Maybe it's time we started thinking about expanding the family." Faith's heart skipped a beat at his words. "You mean?" "A brother or sister for Emma," Cole clarified, though the slight tremor in his voice betrayed his emotions. "If you're ready for that." Faith squeezed his hand, joy spreading through her. "I think I'd like that very much." "It doesn't have to be right away," Cole added quickly. "I know we've only been married a few months, and with Fenton's threats—" "Cole," Faith interrupted gently. "I want more children with you. Emma deserves siblings, and Fenton." She shrugged. "We can't put our lives on hold because of him." Cole pulled her closer, his arm warm around her shoulders. "You're right, as usual." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Besides, what better way to secure the future of the Quincy ranch than to fill it with little Quincy's?" Faith laughed, leaning into his embrace. "A dynasty in the making." "A family," Cole corrected softly. "That's all I want. All I've ever wanted." As they sat together beneath the vast Wyoming sky, Faith reflected on the twists of fate that had brought her to this place, this man, this life. The abandoned mail-order bride had found not just shelter but love. The baby born in scandal had found a father who adored her. And Cole, who had lost so much, had found a second chance at the family he had always wanted. The challenges ahead, Fenton's continued threats, the harsh realities of ranching life, the uncertainties that came with expanding their family seemed manageable when faced together. Faith had arrived in Riverside with nothing but hope and desperation. Now she had everything that truly mattered: love, purpose, and the promise of a future brighter than any she could have imagined. Summer faded into autumn, and with the changing season came news that Ambrose Fenton had suffered financial setbacks in his eastern investments, forcing him to scale back his ambitious plans for expanding his Wyoming holdings. While Cole remained cautious, the immediate threat to their water rights and grazing lands seemed to have diminished. October brought another change to the Quincy household, the confirmation that Faith was expecting their first child together. The news filled the ranch with joy, Emma's excitement at becoming a big sister matched only by Cole's barely contained elation. "A spring baby," Faith said one evening as they sat before the fire, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. "The perfect time for new beginnings." Cole nodded, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "I never thought I'd have this chance again," he admitted quietly. "After Charlotte, I had resigned myself to a different kind of life." Faith leaned against him, understanding the complex emotions this pregnancy might bring for him. "Are you afraid?" she asked gently. Cole was silent for a long moment, his arm tightening around her shoulders. "A little," he finally acknowledged, "but not in the way you might think. I'm not afraid of loving this child or of history repeating itself." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "I'm afraid I won't be able to protect you all. You, Emma, the baby, the ranch. Sometimes it feels like there's so much that could go wrong." "That's part of living," Faith reminded him, "of loving, taking risks, facing uncertainties together. When did you get so wise?" Cole asked, a smile finally breaking through his serious mood. "Oh, about the time I decided to trust a stranger with a broken leg to be a father to my daughter," Faith teased. Cole laughed, the sound warming Faith more than the fire. "Best decision you ever made." "Second best," Faith corrected. "The best was saying yes when you proposed." Their lips met in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened, filled with the promise of their shared future. Faith marveled at how far they had come in a year, from strangers to spouses, from uncertainty to unshakable commitment. Winter arrived with a vengeance that year, burying the ranch under feet of snow and cutting them off from town for weeks at a time. Faith's pregnancy progressed without complications, her body changing to accommodate the new life growing within. Emma continued to thrive, her vocabulary expanding daily and her personality blossoming strong-willed like her mother, thoughtful like her adoptive father. By Christmas, Faith's condition was obvious. Her dresses altered to accommodate her growing belly. The holiday was a quiet but joyful affair, with Miguel and Alina joining them for Christmas dinner, bringing gifts for Emma and news from town. The banker says Fenton has sold some of his northern grazing lands, Miguel reported as they sat around the table laden with the feast Faith and Alina had prepared. Word is he's in trouble with his investors back east. Cole nodded, though his expression remained cautious. Good news if true. But Fenton's been down before and always manages to land on his feet. Perhaps, Miguel acknowledged, but this time many say it is different. He has made powerful enemies. The conversation shifted to pleasanter topics, the record number of calves expected in the spring, Alina's plans for expanding the vegetable garden, Emma's growing fascination with the horses. After their guests departed, as Cole and Faith prepared for bed, Cole retrieved a small package from his dresser drawer. "I have one more gift for you," he said, placing it in Faith's hands. Faith unwrapped the paper to find a delicate silver rattle. "Cole, it's beautiful." "It was mine and then my siblings," he explained. "My mother saved it and my sister sent it when I wrote to tell her about the baby." Faith ran her fingers over the smooth silver, imagining Cole as an infant, the same rattle in his tiny hand. "Thank you. It's perfect." She hesitated, then added, "I have something for you too, though it's not wrapped." Cole raised an eyebrow questioningly. "The baby moved today," Faith said softly. "Here, give me your hand." She placed his palm against the side of her belly, waiting patiently. After a moment, she was rewarded with a distinct flutter beneath his hand. Cole's eyes widened, then filled with wonder. That's our child," he whispered, as if saying it too loudly might break the spell of the moment. Faith nodded, her heart full as she watched the emotions play across his face. "Our child," she echoed. "A new Quincy for the ranch." Cole's hand remained on her belly, waiting for another movement. When it came, a smile of pure joy transformed his face. "Best Christmas gift ever," he declared. As they lay together in the darkness, Cole's hand protectively covering her stomach, Faith thought about the coming year and all it would bring: a new baby, continued challenges with the ranch, the ever-present shadow of Ambrose Fenton. Yet she felt no fear, only a deep contentment and certainty that whatever came, they would face it together. The baby, a healthy boy they named James Michael Quincy after both their fathers, arrived on a perfect spring morning in April. The birth was quick and uncomplicated, with the town midwife arriving just in time to assist. Cole, who had paced anxiously outside the bedroom door despite Faith's insistence that he could stay, was the first to hold his son after the midwife cleaned and swaddled him. "He has your eyes," Cole said in awe, carefully cradling the tiny bundle. "All babies have blue eyes at first," Faith reminded him, exhausted but radiant with happiness. "Not like these," Cole insisted. "These are definitely your eyes." Emma, who had been staying with Alina during the birth, was brought in to meet her brother. At nearly 18 months, she was cautious at first, studying the small, red-faced infant with serious concentration. "Baby," she announced finally, reaching out to touch his cheek with gentle fingers. "My baby." "Your brother," Cole corrected softly. Jamie, Emma declared, and the name stuck. The days that followed were a blur of adjustment and joy as the Quincy household adapted to its newest member. Faith recovered quickly, her body seemingly remembering the rhythms of caring for a newborn. Cole proved to be an enthusiastic, if sometimes overly cautious father, checking on the baby constantly and leaping to attention at the slightest sound. Emma took her role as big sister seriously, bringing her favorite toys to show the baby and helping Faith with diaper changes by handing her cloths and pins. Her vocabulary expanded daily, and she delighted in telling everyone who would listen about my Jamie. Life settled into a new normal, the ranch continuing to prosper under Cole's management and Faith's increasing input. The spring calving was successful, with more healthy calves than they had dared hope for. The threat from Fenton seemed to have receded as reports from town confirmed his financial troubles had forced him to scale back his Wyoming operations significantly. By summer, Faith was fully recovered and Jamie was a thriving, smiling infant who already showed signs of his father's quiet thoughtfulness and his mother's determination. Emma had become his self-appointed guardian, watching over him with fierce protectiveness that amused and touched her parents. One evening in late July, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Cole took Faith's hand in his. "Happy?" he asked simply, an echo of their first Christmas together. Faith looked out at the ranch, at the sturdy house that was now truly a home, at Emma playing with her wooden horse in the yard, at Jamie sleeping peacefully in the cradle beside them. She thought of the journey that had brought her here, of all the pain and disappointment that had preceded this happiness. "Completely," she answered, squeezing his hand. "More than I ever thought possible." Cole's smile was tender as he lifted her hand to his lips. "When I saw you that day in Riverside, standing there with Emma, looking so lost and determined all at once, something told me you were special, that you and Emma were meant to be part of my life." "Then you've both found me," Faith quoted softly, remembering his words from that first day. "And you found us," Cole replied. "A family forged not by blood or obligation but by choice and love." As twilight deepened into night, stars appearing one by one in the vast Wyoming sky, the Quincy family remained on the porch, enjoying the perfect summer evening and the profound happiness they had found in each other. The mail-order bride abandoned with a baby had indeed found her cowboy, and together they had built a life richer and more fulfilling than either could have imagined. In the years that followed, the Quincy ranch prospered, expanding its boundaries when neighboring properties became available. Faith and Cole welcomed 2 more children, a daughter, Charlotte Elizabeth, born 2 years after Jamie, and another son, Thomas, who arrived 3 years later. Emma grew into a beautiful, confident young woman who eventually took over management of the ranch's finances, her head for numbers surprising everyone but her proud parents. Ambrose Fenton eventually left Wyoming territory altogether, his ambitions defeated by a combination of financial reverses and the determined resistance of ranchers like Cole. The water rights that had been so contentious became the foundation of the Quincy ranch's success, allowing them to survive even the harshest drought years. Through it all, the triumphs and challenges, the joys and sorrows that are part of any life fully lived, Faith and Cole remained steadfast in their commitment to each other and to the family they had built together. Their love, born in unusual circumstances and tested by adversity, only deepened with each passing year. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep and they sat together on the porch watching the stars, they would remember that day at Riverside Station, the abandoned bride, the lonely cowboy, and the baby who had brought them together, setting in motion a love story neither could have written alone but both had helped to create.